This channel is what studying abroad dreams are made of. Do subscribe and hit the bell icon.
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. Like every week, we are back with some really interesting content, and like always, we're going to be talking about something that is around overseas education. And today, we're going to be talking about giving the GRE at home. And to discuss about his whole experience, we have Felipe with us, who has recently written the GRE at home. Thank you so much, Felipe, for joining us today for this whole chit chat.
Yeah, hello everyone. Yeah, happy to be here.
So we're going to dive in straight with, the first few questions, and that is going to be around the technology and the ambience of taking the test at home. Can you please tell us a little bit about, the network issues, if there were any, because a lot of students are concerned about that. What kind of, system setup did you have, and what is the ambience like around it?
Yeah. So, well, at first I was supposed to take the exam physically in the US. And when the pandemic started, I first moved the date to a future date, again physical. But then when I saw that the lockdown was going to continue, I changed to at home. So ETS was really helpful with that. I had to contact them on via the chat function on the website. But after I explained my situation, they were very helpful in letting me change. I was a bit worried because I have a MacBook computer, but I saw that ETS allows you to you use a software called Bootcamp, and then you can install Windows. You can just download a free version of Windows online. And that's what I used. It worked really well. I also heard that it's better to use wired internet with an Ethernet cable, which I think probably is better, but I use my Wi-Fi connection, which is stable. Regularly it's stable, and it worked really well during the exam. I had no issues. So in general, I was a bit, when I started the exam, a bit nervous because I had never done a proctored exam, but it went really well. I connected. My exam was at 5 p.m. Eastern in the US. I connected at 5 p.m. and by 5:05, I was already talking to a proctor. And we went through the whole system checks, looking at my camera, my room, and it was really easy. By 5:15, I was already starting the exam.
That's brilliant. So key takeaways are stable internet. You can always use a LAN wire, like you suggested, uh, and it's a very quick process, right? Once you have stable internet, you've got your system connected, and you have the Windows set up, uh, and then you connect it with your proctor. So, what are the questions like with the proctor? Did you interact with the invigilator?
Yeah. So when you log into ProctorU and it says 5 minutes to exam, and then when the time comes, there is a big button that you press, and then you have some instructions. You have to download a software which is actually the chat, and then as you go through these checks, they start recording even before you talk to the proctor, and you have to show your ID as well. So even before you talk to anyone, you're already being recorded. And then by the time that you download the software, it basically starts to look for an available proctor. And then when it finds one, they begin chatting with you. And then eventually they start talking. You start hearing them from the mic, from the speakers. I was expecting to see their faces, but I did not. You never see them, which is probably better, but it's a bit strange the first time that you do it. And well, they just start asking you questions. They ask you to show your ID. In my case, I live in the US. I just showed them my driver's license. I think that if you're abroad, you have to show them your passport and then a supplemental ID, I believe. I'm not exactly sure. And I had to show them my forearms to make sure I had nothing here. And then I had to use my cell phone camera to show them the front of the computer just to make sure that the monitor is fine. They also do some checks on your computer. They see if there is any software that's running that's not allowed, and they deactivate it because you give them control over your computer. And then they actually check if you have an external display connected. So I have an external display, but it was plugged off. So no problems at all.
Brilliant. So were you asked to show the room as well, or was it just your table and setup over there?
I had to show them my room. So it's actually in this room that I took it. I had to show them every corner of the room, and then under the desk, and then on top of the desk, just to make sure that you don't have anything that's not allowed.
That's right. Just to add to what you said, Felipe, in India, there will be a requirement of your passport, and that's pretty much it. That's all you need. Of course, maybe in US, the alternative is the driver's license. So that's one point we wanted to make. Apart from that, another question we've been hearing often is how do you manage without the traditional pen and paper? What is the alternative to that, and how have you been practicing for that?
Yeah, so they give you two options: a sheet of paper in a plastic pouch or a whiteboard. I went with the whiteboard. Actually, I have it here. It's this one. It's something like this. I think it's 11 inches by 12 inches, which is like 28 centimeters by 30. I think that's the size more or less, just to show it again. I had to, look for it online. I bought it. There's a store here in the US called Staples. That's where I got it. So before the exam, I did practice on this whiteboard quite a bit just to get used to it. I bought, a very thin marker, thin point, so that it's easier to write and actually see your handwriting, because with thicker markers, sometimes you write and then you don't understand what you wrote.
Yeah.
So I practiced. To be honest, for me, using the whiteboard was much better because I already took the GRE physical before. I took it last year. And I don't know how it is in other countries, but here in the US, they give you a sheet of paper that folds out. But then when you run out, you have to raise your hand and ask for more, and then takes a while. Just being able to use the whiteboard and then erase everything, and it was more practical for me. I really liked using the whiteboard.
Yeah, I think so too, because you can just erase off whatever you don't need. Few students, on the contrary, feel that I would want to write down a few formulae, and probably that would take away a little space off the board. But I think it's very practical to have whatever you want in that space and get done with it, and brush it off when you don't need it. And like that, your mind can stay focused on only the few things that it needs to see. So
Yeah.
that actually adds to that. And I actually like the size of the board that you've used. I think that's very practical and handy. Uh, Something like that would be most suitable for somebody who's giving the test.
Yeah, I think this is the perfect size because it's not too big, not too small. They ask that you show them the front and the back, at the beginning, just to make sure that you don't have any formulas or anything.
Yeah, that would be very convenient otherwise. Yes. So coming to the questions and the different sections, tell me something about the quality of questions in comparison to the practice tests that you've taken. Otherwise, was it more easy or difficult? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I took the Power Prep practice tests, both the two free ones and two paid ones. And I would say the exam was very similar. The only difference is when you get an experimental section. Usually those sections are very different because the questions are more difficult. And you never know exactly when that's going to happen. So it's a bit stressful not knowing when that's going to come up. which changes the experience of the test a little bit. And then when you're doing the experimental section and you realize that you are having a hard time, that also creates a different dynamic. That I would say that's the only difference. But in terms of the actual questions of the normal sections, they were very similar to the prep exams.
Exactly. And you've given the test last year, so you have a decent comparison of the traditional style of giving the test, the quality of questions there compared to now. So you would say they are fairly similar.
Yeah. I don't think the quality of the question changes from physical to at home.
Because I'm guessing a few kids would be hoping that the test would be easier or, otherwise, because it's from your house and you're a little more anxious than otherwise. But yeah, so they're pretty much the same, you'd say.
Yeah, the questions themselves are the same. At least for me, I don't know, it depends on the person. Being at home with no distractions, no noise, it's better. So I prefer doing it at home actually than doing it in a physical location.
Absolutely. I think what GRE has done is really cool. And with the whiteboard, the comfort of the whiteboard, and making sure that you're in a safe place, there are a lot of students who have actually gone ahead on record and said that it's a lot easier to give the test at home because it's a lot more quiet. It's a controlled environment. For kids who get anxious because of being surrounded with so many people, it's actually a win-win. So that's great.
Yeah.
Tell me something about the breaks that you're supposed to have between the sections. Did you get those breaks? Did you take them?
Yeah, so there is, I think, 60-second break between the first few sections. So during those, I simply stayed here, sitting down in this same chair, looking at the camera, not doing anything. Something I'll say is that if at any point during the test you speak because you're reading a question or whatever, they will hear you and they might ask you, do you need anything or whatever. So actually, I think one of the rules is that you're not supposed to think out loud. And I believe that's the reason why. When the 10-minute pause came, I told my proctor, 10-minute pause is now, I spoke out loud. And I then switched from the exam to the chat window and waited for them to respond, which they did. So they told me, it's okay to leave the room. So I left the room. I went to another room to get some water and a snack. And then when I came back, I again asked out loud to the proctor, I'm back. Do you need me to show you my room again? And they said yes. So I again had to get up, show them the corners under the desk, on top of the desk. And that was it. So when I did that, I still had, I think, 3 minutes for the pause to continue. But since the proctor saw me sitting down, it was a woman, she cut the pause short. So she actually locked me back in before the 10 minutes were up.
But that was without you asking for that.
Yeah. So maybe that's something to keep in mind. She saw me sitting down. We had already checked everything. I still had 3 minutes and she logged me back in. She didn't ask or anything, which was fine by me, but it was a little bit unexpected.
Yeah, I think for somebody who is, yet to give the test, you can always add in and let the proctor know that I need the full 10 minutes. Do not start before the 10 minutes are over. Because if someone just wants to come back, sit for those 3 minutes and just sit back and compose themselves again for the test, and they see that, the timer started again, it can cause a little bit of, anxiety. So
yeah.
You
So
might
definitely, yes. Tell the proctor you want the full pause.
Yeah. That's right. Felipe, can you also tell us what kind of material you used to practice for the test, and for how long did you practice? Like, how many weeks did you practice for the test?
Yeah. Well, so I work full time, so I can only practice at after work. So I practice around an hour each day. So I studied with the Manhattan materials. I actually took their online course last year from end of September until end of October. And I took my first exam in December last year. And then, I wasn't really satisfied with my score, which is why, through the holidays, I didn't really study. But then when I came back to work after the holidays, I again picked up and took the exam again. So I always use the Manhattan material. They have the 5-pound book, which is very popular. When you sign up for one of their online courses, you also get access to their online platform that has some explanations about concepts and then some questions that you should take that are from the 5-pound book. That's what I use mostly. And then the Power Prep test exams. I did not time myself too many times, which I think was a mistake. I think that after you understand the concepts, at some point you have to start timing yourself in the questions that you do as preparation, because that's I think maybe the most important part, being able to solve those questions really quickly.
That's right. So Manhattan Prep, and in fact, Manhattan is pretty famous in India as well, but there are a lot of other materials available. Any of the YouTube channels that you were referring to?
No. I know that there is a few that are very famous. GRE GMAT, I keep hearing about that one, but I only use Manhattan. That's all I used.
It's actually a good thing to be focused, with one material. But then again, give it your all, and you've got to be sincere with whatever you put your head into. So that's supremely important. So Felipe, I also wanted to know, what were your scores like?
Yeah, I mean, so I scored 326 overall. I scored in the high 150s for quant and in the high 160s for verbal. So overall, it was 326.
That's a brilliant score, and that brings me to one of our last questions, and that is, towards the end of the test, you get to apply to a certain few universities. Did you do that, and are you expecting a reward from the universities? How's
No,
that?
not yet, because I will apply this fall. So I have a list of universities that I'm thinking about, but I still haven't made up my mind. So I didn't apply, which, you can send your scores to a few universities for free, which is good. I didn't do it. So I'll have to pay when I do it.
I think that's okay, because that is not like a full stamped approval anyway if you get a reward from them. So you can always go back later and give in your score for evaluation before you even apply to a university. So either way, it's a great option to have, but it's not mandatory. Uh, a lot of students have been joking about this and have been asking about this one question, and that is it easy, or can you possibly cheat in the test?
I mean, I don't think so, unless you are a criminal mastermind and you figure out a way to do it. But honestly, I don't think it's worth trying to do it. I think the possibilities of being caught are very high, and if you get caught, the consequences are very negative. So I wouldn't risk it. I don't think it's worth it.
I totally agree with you. We've been having a lot of these interactions with different students, and I always ask this question. A, it's entertaining. B, I want to hear one student come back and say, you know what, it's possible if you do that. But literally everybody has gone on record and said that, please don't do that. There's an AI that's enabled on your system. There's a proctor that's watching you like a hawk. You do not want to do that. And if you do end up getting caught in any kind of malicious activity, there's a possibility that you'll be barred from taking the test, if not forever, for a very long time. And that's no good for your career. So guys, please stay away from any of those activities. Uh, that's one suggestion I have. But any final thoughts and suggestions for students who are going to give the test?
Yeah, I think, I mean, don't stress about it too much. It's even if, if you have a MacBook using Bootcamp like I did, it'll work most likely than not. it shouldn't be too bad, honestly. And I was, in my case, I was worried about the space, but I just cleaned my desk. I removed everything that's here, but there is a bookshelf here with books that I didn't move, and that's okay. So, just use your common sense to make sure that you have a space that it's gonna work, and don't stress out too much. It should go well.
Awesome. Those were super wise words. Thank you so much, Felipe, for joining us today. This was supremely helpful for our community. I'm sure everyone's going to take away something important from this experience that you've shared. Guys, if you have any further queries, you can always reach out to us via the comment section below, or you could DM us through social media via iSchoolConnect everywhere. I think that's pretty much it. Thank you once again, Felipe, for joining us today. Thank you, guys. Take care.